Welcome to the Computer Specialist Repair channel. Today we're going to be doing a keyboard slash palm rest replacement on a MacBook Pro. This is an A1278 model. This is the early 2012 version of this laptop. They also made this in a 2012 that is also compatible with the same part. I believe the early 2011, the late 2011, and the early 2012s and late 2012s are all compatible with the same part. You may want to confirm which one you have before you do this job, because if you get the wrong part, it definitely will not work, because these mounts are aligned differently for the bottom screws. But anyway, we have the replacement part here. You can actually get away with just doing the keyboard on this model because it is luckily held in with screws, but it is usually a lot more difficult to do that because it's held in with about 100 tiny screws, and that takes a lot more effort, believe it or not, than to just do the whole top. So we're just going to do the whole top instead. So first thing we're going to want to do is flip the laptop over. This one already has the bottom screws out of it, but normally you would have 3 longer screws up here, and then the remaining 7 screws are all the same size. So the one at the top left and all the ones on the sides are the same, and then these 3 right here are longer than the rest. Once you get those screws out, the bottom comes off really easy. It just lifts up like that. We haven't done anything else to this machine yet, so we'll go ahead and start the procedure. First thing we're going to do is use our toolkit. We're going to need a Torx T5 bit, a Phillips 00 bit, and a Y0 bit for the battery. So we're going to take out the battery first. I always like to disconnect it. So what we'll do is that's this connector down here. Easiest way to get that out is to use like a pry tool. This is like a spudger, and just pry down. You can also use your fingernail too, and this lifts straight upwards, and you can kind of get it with your fingernail, and that pops right out, and that will prevent power from going to the machine, so you can work on it without having to worry too much about damaging it. So since we already did that disconnection of the battery, we'll just take the battery completely out now. We're going to need to do it anyway, so it's not a huge deal. These are the 2 Y screws. Apple's pretty known for putting weird screws in their computers that you're not likely to have, so unfortunately you will probably need a repair toolkit for this. The screw at the top right is a longer one than the one on the left, so make sure to use a screw organizer or something similar to make sure that you are organizing your screws correctly. We have these ones here from iFixit that we've labeled, and allows us to keep everything sorted. Now we can take the battery out. We use this little plastic tab here, or you can actually pull from the connectors if yours is broken. And it is held into some tape, so it might give a little bit of pressure required. But after that, the battery should just pull straight out. You can set that off to the side. And next thing we'll do is we will take out the hard drive. So we will switch over to our Phillips bit, and luckily those 2 Y screws were the only times we need that Y bit, so now we can just straight up use Phillips. And to take out the hard drive, we just need, this is the Phillips 00 bit, and we'll just take out these 2 screws here. These hold down the hard drive on this side, and we can actually kind of get a little bit of leverage, and with this pull tab here, this should just lift right out. And we'll disconnect the ribbon cable. Be careful with these because they can rip pretty easily, so just make sure you pull that out straight. Next thing we'll do is we will start by disconnecting a lot of the connections. So we have the touchpad, the keyboard backlight, the hard drive, the DVD drive, the Wi-Fi, the camera, and the speakers. So it doesn't really matter which order you do them in, but I'll show you how they come out so that you don't accidentally rip them. We have seen customers especially do that in the past. So we like to use little tweezers here. For this first connector, this is the speaker connection. You may have to unroute the cable there, so we will push it around so we can get enough room in there to actually be able to pull it up. And now this connector will just pull straight up like that. And then we have the camera connector to the right of that, and this will just pull straight outwards. And we have these three. All three of these will just pop straight up, so we can just use the spudger tool. That will pop up. This pops up. This one pops up. The touchpad. Also, I'll just use my fingernail for that. And the keyboard and the keyboard backlight are a little bit different. For those, you have to flip up this little lever here, this little plastic lever, and you can then pull the flex cable straight out, and the same for this one over here. It should just pull straight out just like that. Now, next thing we'll do is we will probably take out the fan. Again, this isn't being done in any specific order, but for the fan we'll need a T5 screwdriver. And we have 3 different screws right there. One of them is a different size than the rest. This one in the top left is actually longer than these two, but these two I believe are the same size. I will check that for you now because my memory does not quite recall. But yep, those two are the same size. So these two right there are the same size, and then this one is the longer one. So make sure you don't accidentally put that in the wrong place. With those 3 screws out, you can just lift up the fan from the edge, and this comes right out. And don't forget to unplug the connector. This one's the same style as the speakers, so if you remember that just pulls straight upwards like that. Put that off to the side. So there's quite a bit of dust in this computer, so we'll want to clean that before we put it back together with the new one. Now we actually also have one more connector down here. This is for the battery status indicator for this data charge and the lid sensor, so that can come out just like that. And at this point we can start taking out the motherboard. So we will keep the same T5 screwdriver bit and start removing some of the motherboard screws. So far we have one here and one here. There's one underneath where the fan was right there. Here, 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 and the DC board connector. So we'll start out with those because these screws are longer than the rest. Those two are the same size, but they are longer than the rest of the motherboard screws, so you can see those right there. We'll put that off to the side. And now we can start taking out the motherboard screws. So we'll start in this corner down here. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, and I believe that's it. Yep. So now we can unplug the screen connector. This is just there's a little piece of tape here. You have to lift that up, and that will take this little metal piece back, and then it should allow you to pull it straight out, just like that. And that will come out. Put those motherboard screws off to the side, and make sure we didn't lose one there. Good. Okay, now the motherboard should be pretty loose. So in order to take that out though, because the microphone is still in the board, it's actually underneath this little bracket here, so this has to come out before the motherboard does. These are 2 Phillips screws, and they're different sizes, but for this one I like to leave those screws in and then lift the whole bracket out, and then that way I can just set it back in and I don't have to remember which one went where. So after those are unscrewed, I just like to, if I can make this so you can see it, but this will pull straight up and that will come right out. Of course the screw fell in, but that's okay. And we'll put that off to the side. And now the motherboard can actually come out, so the way we do that is we lift from the heatsink and just making sure that all the connectors are unplugged, and that should pretty much just lift right out, just like that. And you can kind of tilt it, because and this might be difficult to see, but behind here is the actual microphone, and that's usually held in pretty well with some adhesive, so you might have to do a little bit of prying to kind of pry that out, but eventually it will come out just like that, and that should come right out, and then the whole board will come right out just like that. And it's normal for that little tape to be left behind there. It is held in really strong, so the tape usually comes with it, but it doesn't affect the microphone at all. So now we will take out the Wi-Fi card and speaker, actually. We'll start out by taking these two screws out right here. And this one right here on the metal piece doesn't need to come out, so that can stay in. That just connects the shell to the actual Wi-Fi module. So those two come out. And we have this one over here. And I'll just leave those screws in. Usually what I'll do is I'll take this screw out and put it on the speaker, because it's actually magnetic, so that will stick right to it. But if I lift it up on the edge, I can actually, when I unroute that cable, this whole thing should free itself. But before we actually take it out, what we'll have to do is unplug these Wi-Fi connections. So the way we'll take out those Wi-Fi antenna connections is we will use a pair of tweezers, or if you have a pry tool or something like that. They come out pretty easily. They lift straight up, so you can use a tool or your fingernail, and they pull straight up just like that, and you'll hear them click, and then they pop right out. One other thing we'll need to do is lift up the camera connector and pull that up and unroute it through those plastics. Pull all these out just like that, and there's one more there, and they'll pull right out. And now you should be able to lift this piece completely out. Just make sure that my screws are all the way undone, and this should come right out. And actually on this model, this is the 2011-2012, this screw actually needs to come completely out, the one on the left here, because it actually holds in the antenna wire, which is actually on the case and not the Wi-Fi card. So this one will actually need to come out. And I'll pull that screw out just like that with a pair of tweezers, and now this should lift right out just like that. And this one also needs to come out. Okay, so this will need to come out as well. Those two are the same size, so no confusion there. Now hopefully this should come right out just like that. We'll have to put it off to the side. We can't pull it totally out yet, because now we have to take out the CD-ROM to free the cable for the other speaker, which is actually like sort of attached to the DVD drive. So we'll need to take out those screws. We have 3 in total, and I'll take out this one first, and then we have this one over here, and we have this one down at the bottom. And once those 3 are out, the whole thing will just lift right out like that. And funny enough, there is a business card stuck in the CD drive, so that's very interesting. You don't see that every day, but makes sense. So now that we got the CD drive out, we can take the other speaker out, and the way we do that is just by pulling the wire from underneath all the plastic routing holes. And this speaker is held in with glue, so we just have to use like a pry tool to wedge it underneath there, kind of separate it, just like that. And you'll hear it kind of, the tape start to separate. You can also use a guitar pick if you have that. And this whole thing will pull right out like that. And now you can put that whole assembly off to the side. So the second to last part is we'll have to take out this frame piece here. Yours might have came with this, but ours didn't, so we'll need to take this out. This is what holds the CD drive and the motherboard together and prevents it from like flexing and stuff like that. So I'll take out those 2 screws. There's one up there and one at the bottom, and that whole thing should lift out. I'll leave the screws in it the way it is. And last but not least, we can actually take out the screen itself. I'll zoom out a little bit so you can see that. These are held in with 3 Torx screws on either side, and these are T8 screws. So you can just pull the wires back like that and unscrew those. Usually what we like to do is take out 2 screws from each side, leave one in, and then open the computer so you can take out the remaining screw on each side, and that will kind of let you shimmy the screen out a lot faster. So we'll leave 1 hinge screw in on either side, and now open the machine just like that. We'll flip it upside down, and hopefully I can focus this in so you can see it. And we'll take out the remaining screw there. And on the other side. And that should allow the whole screen to just fall right out like that. Now we can start transferring everything over to the new top. So this is the old one and this is the new one. Just make sure you compare the two, make sure you're not missing anything. In this case, we actually need to also transfer over the hard drive cable because the new one didn't come with one. So we'll do that quickly. That is just a Phillips bit, if I can remember where I put it. We will now take these 2 screws out down here. Try to zoom in so you can see. I'll also put the hinge screws off back to the side. Just like that. And I will take these 2 out right here. This is for the hard drive. Now if yours came with a hard drive cable, then you don't need to do this. But because ours didn't, we're going to need to do that. And we also have these 2 screws right here. Front of the case, this is for that little light in the front, but it also holds the hard drive in, so this one needs to come out. And that's held in with tape, so you can just kind of pry that out, and it should just eventually come right out. It'll take a little bit of prying there, but it will come out, hopefully. Okay, and then once that's out, we have to slowly remove the tape underneath this connector, so just be very careful when you're pulling that up, but it should just peel right off. Definitely go slow with that because you don't want to rip the ribbon cable accidentally. And once that's up, you can just lift that out, and we'll put that into the new one. Make sure those screws don't fall out like that just did. So yeah, now we can move over to the new top and start transplanting everything. First thing we'll do is we'll kind of do it in reverse order, so we will do the cable for the hard drive first, and we can just seat that in the same way it was before, and put in the 2 tiny screws first. And we can tape down that cable again. And we will route it correctly. Making sure that it is taped down all the way. Okay, now we can screw those screws back in. Okay, and now we can do the screen. So I will grab the screen from underneath, and I'll zoom out so you can see. And we will make sure all the connectors are above the hinges, and you can just pull that in and it should just line itself right back up. Make sure I've got the right screwdriver here and put the hinge screws back in. I would definitely do one on each side first, and then so that way you can align it. But just open the machine so that it's at a 90-degree angle, or whatever angle it was when you first took them out. It should line itself back up, and then we'll let you put the screws back in, just like that. And then we'll do one on the other side as well. Now that you've done that, you can actually close the laptop, and we'll do the rest of them. These screws, these two. This side, and we have two on the other side. Okay, now we can put that metal frame back in. That one right in the middle there. That was a Phillips bit, so we can put that one back on our screwdriver and screw that in. Same way it went off, same way it came off. So just like that. And now we'll do the CD DVD drive. I'll take that business card that was stuck in there and put this back in. Just like that. Make sure that's aligned. If you have the wrong one, this is how you'll know you have the wrong top, is that these three won't line up. You find that out the hard way if you've ever done one of these before, but anyway. You have those three screws. You have the top, bottom, and the one on off to the side there, connected to that frame we just put in. So put that second one in and the third one. And now that should be nice and sturdy. Next thing we will do is we will put that Wi-Fi antenna back in, and that also had a speaker, and yes, so we actually need to put that speaker in first. So this actually needs to come out. Quick. And then this speaker right here goes underneath just like it did before. Press that down so the tape makes good contact, and then this cable needs to be routed in that little tape groove right down there. And there is a little piece of plastic for the connector that needs to be routed down in here. So we'll just push that under just like that. And finally the drive can go back in, and those three screws can go back in. And the third one up there. Okay, so now we can actually put this back in, and that will just line up there. Make sure all of the cables at the top left for the Wi-Fi are underneath this little foam piece up here. Focus in on that so you can see. Because if you don't, then you will run out of room and they will seem like they are too short. But they're definitely not, so just make sure that those cables are underneath. Also make sure that the metal piece and the little piece right here goes above, so that way you can put that screw back in, and the metal piece down there as well. And now we can put those 2 screws back in. And those were Phillips as well, so I can go down in like that. And just make sure that this one up here goes back in to that little metal piece surrounding the screw, and then we'll screw in just like that. And we'll start with the Wi-Fi antenna. So the way that they go back in is the same way they come off. They just push straight down like that. And now we can do the smaller ones one by one, or the shorter ones I should say. And we just do them one at a time. In no specific order. And we'll snap the last one back in there. Just like that. And last thing we need to do is do the camera wire. And the reason we do that last is because it also holds in the Wi-Fi antenna next to it, so that's the reason why that needs to be done first. And then this cable will continue routing and all the way underneath this cable, and just like that. Now we can put the speaker screw back in. That was the one I attached to the magnet before, and that will screw in just like that. And so now we've gotten that done, we can put the motherboard back in. And so I'll zoom out so you can see that a little better. Definitely want to make sure you put it in at an angle. Make sure the screen connector is back and you're not underneath of it. And just like how the last part to come out was the microphone, just make sure that the microphone is aligned back with the hole it was in originally. And you can press that in there to make sure it's in. Make sure that the MagSafe connector is lined up. And at that point you can slide the motherboard back in. On the left side, just make sure that all the connectors are above the motherboard, not below them, so you don't accidentally end up pinching any of them underneath. So I'll just pull all of those forward like that. And once you've done that, then you can start plugging things back in. Looks like I also forgot one down here for the battery status indicator, so make sure that that's in all the way, just like that. And now that can just lay in like that. So at this point, like I said, we can just start plugging things back in the same way that we found them. So in no specific order, I'll do the speaker first. That was that red and black one. That one just goes straight downwards, like that. And then I'll do the camera wire next. That goes straight in, like that. And then we have the next 4, which just push in. Push those back into place. You should hear clicks, and you should feel it also go down, so you'll know that it's in there all the way. And the keyboard on this is actually probably the most difficult part. Trying to get that back in is probably the most difficult part of the whole repair, because it never wants to go in straight. So what you're going to want to do is make sure that it is pushed down flat, and I like to use tweezers for this because it never goes in correctly. Just hold it in on both sides, make sure both sides are going in, because if you start putting it in the wrong way, it will bend the cable and it won't go in correctly. So before you put any force pushing it in, make sure that it is aligned. And I like to sometimes even use a spudger to kind of push it in like that. And once you see that all the pins are in the connector, you can push that latch back down. And same goes for the one next to it. This one's actually a lot easier, but the same thing can happen because it's at such an angle. Just try to get it in there and then latch it back down. Now we'll do the actual motherboard screws. So we will switch back to our T5-bit Torx driver, And we'll start putting in the motherboard screws into there. I believe there were 7 of those we counted earlier. And I will start putting those in now. And we'll do them one by one. Just like that. Put this one in up here. Top. And then we have our last one next to the screen connector. Just like that. Okay, so now we will do the fan. It just again lays in there, and I will pull out the dust, and just to make sure that it is a clean pathway. And now we can lay the fan back in. That should lay in there no problem. And then the connector, just like the speaker connector up here, just lays on top, and then that will just press in like that. We can now put the fan screws back in, and as we remember, there was these 2 that were the same, and then this one that was the longer one. So just make sure you're aware of that. That way you don't accidentally put the longer screw into the motherboard side and then go through the motherboard, because that would not be good. So we'll do the last one here at the top, which is the longer one, and that should screw right back in. So now we'll put that bracket on from before. This actually goes in underneath like this, and then has this little tab here that goes over top of the connector. So I will screw that back in now, and that should pretty much protect the screen cable from coming out. This is a little bit difficult to align because I can't see above me right now, but we should be able to get that aligned in there just like that, and do the one on the other side there. And when that's all set, we have just the screen connector, which goes in straight. So line that up, pull that in, and then when that's all in, you can put that lever down, and that will snap right back on. Now we will do the hard drive. So this pretty much just goes in the same way it did before. This plugs in right here. You can put it in on an angle, and then it will just lay down like that. And that little bracket from before goes on top, and we'll just screw right back in, just like that. And that will screw in. And we'll do the battery last but not least, and then after that we should be good to go. One thing I actually forgot to do is put the 2 screws back into the MagSafe connector, so I'll put those in now. Always a good idea to keep track of your screw organizer if you have one, to make sure that you put all your screws back. So I have those 2 right there, and just want to make sure that those are definitely in, otherwise when you go to plug in the laptop, it won't actually it'll just push the jack in. So I'll put that in there like that, put the second screw in, and now we can actually put the battery back in. So we'll do that, and then that should be all set. So we'll switch back to our Y screwdriver, and we will do the long one on this side first. So line that up and screw that in, just like that. And then we have the other one on this side right here. Make sure the screws are going in straight. Okay. And yeah, now you can plug in the battery, and we'll test it and make sure everything works. And we can throw the bottom back on now. And yes, the battery is connected and plugged in, so we can put the battery back in, put the bottom screws back on, and it should be all good to go. So that was how to replace the keyboard / top assembly on an A1278. Again, this was the early 2011 model. And if you have any questions, leave it in the comments. If you like our videos, give us a subscription with this red subscribe button, and stay tuned for our other videos coming soon.